September 30th, 2024. It's really the forecast for the first week in October, isn't it? Well, yeah, that's what it is. So this is the week of the solar eclipse. Now, just to back up a little bit, we know that 2 weeks ago we had the lunar eclipse. Remember, we come up from baseline to the lunar eclipse. We never get anywhere near normal. We're way above baseline. We're never normal. We're above baseline. And then we get to the solar eclipse, which is another peak of activity with a very different flavor than the lunar eclipse. And then over the course of the next week or so, we should trail off and get back towards baseline. But we're not gonna. We're not going to. We're not going to get back towards baseline because, well, should I save that for next week's forecast? Well, maybe I will, maybe I won't. Jupiter and Pluto are going to station next week. It's exciting. It's exciting. So you should subscribe. You see, subscribe. And this way you'll get that forecast because can't talk about it now because we have to talk about this solar eclipse. Very different energy than the lunar eclipse of 2 weeks ago. Lunar eclipse, boom, things happen. It's a full moon. It's right there. It's in your face. You don't have to think about it. Well, you can think about it, but you don't have to think about it because what's going to happen happens. You just see it. It's an event, right? These are a manifestation of things. Things come to a head. Things burst open at the full moon. All right, it's getting a little bit gross. Things reach a climb. They reach a climax at the full moon, maybe. And then we have a little bit of a diminution of energy, which we did last week. Probably, if you have a memory for it, on Wednesday, when the moon in Cancer made its way up towards Mars in Cancer. Wednesday early in the day, although if you were in Europe, it lasted a little bit longer. A lot of energy there. And it was, it was the moon in Cancer meeting Mars in Cancer. It's not Mars' favorite sign. It's the moon's home sign, but she's a little extra in Cancer anyway. And but the energy we're still feeling that eclipse energy, still a little bit much. We had the Mercury-Neptune opposition and all of that. Well, that was last week. That's last week. But the point is we were not back to baseline last week. And now we come into the solar eclipse. And this is not an outward going explosive kind of energy. This is an implosive energy, right? This is drawing us inward. If the full moon lunar eclipse is like a thunderstorm, this is like the quiet before the storm. This is that time, like, when the birds stop chirping and everything gets quiet and the energy kind of comes downwards and like, something's going on. But you're not quite sure what. And in fact, we're not quite sure what. It's the new moon. It's the new moon. You don't get to see. Right? There's no moon out there at night, and it's the new moon. It's a seeding time. You don't get to see. You don't get to see, but something's going on. Typically, nothing happens at a solar eclipse. Nothing happens beyond the fact that we're feeling the energy drawn in. And so people, it's a little bit like next week's Pluto station. We feel the power. We feel the power, but we're not quite sure what to do with it. And that's the energy that really characterizes the beginning of this week. And so on September 30th itself, we have the sun meeting with Mercury, normal. We're feeling the energy of Mars trine Saturn, but that really, it's technically on Monday the 30th, but really that energy is strongest on Sunday, which is great for, directing your energies on the weekend. If you're watching this before September 30th, if you're watching on the 28th or the 29th, this is a great time to focus your energies to see what you can do with things. Probably because coming into the new moon, probably more like wrapping things up. And anything you got to do, you can do it. You can do it with this energy. So we get a little bit of that on Monday, but not much. And then we get on the 2nd, which is Wednesday, October 2nd, we have the eclipse itself. Again, other than the fact that it feels tense. It's the sort of thing where you feel like a little bit of the anxiety, or, you feel like something's going to shift, but you're not really sure what, you're not sure when, you're not sure where. That's the energy of a solar eclipse. There's no reason why you can't have a wonderful day or anything like that. It is a new moon, so typically the energy is a little bit lower, right? The energy is a little bit lower. That's part of why not much happens on a solar eclipse, generally speaking. It's a little bit of a low energy time. It is a good time for just sort of stepping back, letting things be. Just just let things be. It's not you take care of everyday tasks, go to the food store, do what needs to be done at work, all of that kind of stuff is fine. It's just, it's not a time for, initiating major projects, which is why I said that on the weekend, the Mars Saturn thing, probably a time to wrap things up. It is not a great time for initiating. But it is a pretty good energy overall. I mean, if you just let things go. Except you might feel a little something going on. You might feel a little, impending dread. You may not. Who knows, right? It's not a big deal. Coming out of the new moon on the 4th, this is Friday, we have Venus trine to Saturn. That's a nice aspect for sure. Now, Venus is not very happy in Scorpio, but that's for horary astrology. It's not really relevant to us. It's a nice kind of energy. Now, if you've had some sort of relationship thing going on, right, then Venus trying to Saturn just after the eclipse might be a time when you either make a major readjustment in your relationship, or maybe, see you later. But that's kind of the pattern that we're getting out of the eclipse. At the eclipse itself, backtracking here a little bit, because I kind of wanted you to feel about what's going to happen after the eclipse. The eclipse itself is closely conjunct Black Moon Lilith. Now, I'm not an expert on Black Moon Lilith, but it seems to have a lot to do with relationships. It seems to have a lot to do with sexuality. It seems to have a lot to do with power, feminine, I should say, feminine power, not female power. Black Moon Lilith will be exactly conjunct the sun and the moon at this eclipse, exactly right there. You know what I'm thinking? Then, also in Libra, but a little bit further along at 18 degrees, because the eclipse is at 10 Libra. At 18 degrees is partnership asteroid Juno. And while, the sun's not going to get to Juno for another 8 days, the moon is going to get there. The moon is going to get there in about 16 hours after the eclipse. It's pretty soon afterwards. And then we have, so you can take the Black Moon Lilith conjunct the eclipse. Juno, more like that, it's like an asterisk with a cross on the bottom. Juno at the eclipse, or a little after the eclipse. And then we have this Venus-Saturn aspect. This eclipse, therefore, stringing you along over here, or trying to get my thoughts together, not quite sure which one. This eclipse seems to be quite significant for relationships, and how appropriate that it's in the sign of Libra, which we pretty much associate with relationships. There we go. So if there's a relationship, kind of like a romantic sexual relationship kind of thing, not just, we relate to everybody. This looks more like a romantic relationship type of thing. If there's a relationship that's kind of hanging on at a hinge point, going to go one way or the other, this eclipse and the days afterwards looks like it'll get it moving. Again, for better or for worse. Mercury goes on to square, or is it conjunct? Mercury goes on to conjunct Juno on the 7th, getting towards the end of the week over here. It's yet another indication, and this time it's going to open up communication in relationship. So we're getting lots of stuff to do with relationship. Now, the rest of us will have to wait and see. If you have a planet right around 10 degrees of Libra, this is your eclipse, right? This is happening to you. If you have a planet, particularly Well, you've got the sun, the moon, Mercury, or Venus at 10 degrees Aries opposite this eclipse, then somebody may come at you with some kind of a message. We'll hope it's a good one, but it may be coming at you. If you have 10 degrees of Cancer or 10 degrees of Capricorn, you know, we'll see. The eclipse is square to Ceres, and Ceres, the Earth Mother archetype, although those people that know about Ceres often say that's not a very good term to use, but it gets used, so we'll stick with it here. It's a higher octave of the moon, and this eclipse is square to it. That could be quite significant for earthy issues like the food supply, the environment, and so on. Ceres is in Capricorn, where there's the question of, okay, what are the institutions that have to do with things like our food supply and the environment and so on, and this eclipse might be giving them a little bit of a rattle. That's pretty subtle. I mean, that's mundane astrology. And, if I saw something in the New York Times about that on Wednesday or Thursday, I'd be like all excited. But, I'm not sure that we're even going to catch something like that. But that's a message that's there. So there's very possibly some sort of environmental message that's coming out around that time, or something to do with the food supply or something like that. Again, you got to be right there, though. If it's going to affect you personally, you got to be pretty much 10 degrees of Libra or 10 degrees of Aries. If you're nearby, if you're at 15 degrees or 5 degrees of those signs, it's the thunderstorm comes, and it's, the lightning strikes a tree, half mile away, and it makes a big, you hear the thunder and all that, it makes a big bright light and all that. But it's, not necessarily going to have a major effect on you. It's just, you feel it more. Though the rest of us who don't have placements around 10 degrees of cardinal signs, it's just things, we still feel the basic energy of the eclipse, but it's unlikely to manifest as much. Again, even if you don't have anything at 10 degrees of cardinal signs, if your relationship is at a hinge point, better or worse, this is something that's very likely to get us moving. We're going to come out of this eclipse, and we would usually go back down to baseline. That's usually where we'd be headed after an eclipse. But because Jupiter and Pluto are going to station on the 9th and the 11th of October, that's going to keep the energy going for more than another week. And so we're not getting near baseline anytime soon. It's going to keep that in mind, because that is an important factor in our October. We're going to get at least halfway through the month before we're eligible to return to baseline. Again, folks are a little bit stressed and a little bit extra during this period of time. And some of it could actually be very, very good. Stepping aside a little bit is probably a very good strategy this week, right? I mean, I've given some examples of people who cannot step aside from this energy. But for the rest of us, stepping aside a little bit is probably a pretty good strategy. Um, you really cannot get a ton of things done this week. Don't go hiding. I don't want to hear any of that. I'm going to go hide under my bed type of stuff. It's not about that. Take care of your everyday stuff. Go to work, go shopping. Who said that? Oh, no, never mind. Go about your business, do everything that you're going to do, go out, have some fun. It's a new moon. What are you going to do? But, by the weekend, the moon will be waxing, and that Venus Saturn trine ought to be helpful for going out and have a little bit of fun. The moon will be in Sagittarius by the end of the weekend, right? Right? Yeah. So, there's some good potential out there for stuff. So don't think that you have to hide under the bed or anything like that. But is it a great time to initiate new stuff? Not really. Major projects and things like that, Not quite yet. Certainly not before the weekend. Maybe by Saturday, Sunday. Not Sunday's not a great day to initiate things anyway. Probably hold off for next week, but then we have the Jupiter station. That's never a good time to do anything, and that's what astrologers are here to tell you. No, it's not what I mean to say at all. It's this week, lower energy, and if you're feeling lower energy, just deal with it. It's okay. It's okay. Some folks might be complaining of minor illnesses and stuff like that. Some stuff going around. Don't make a big deal out of it. It's okay. Actually, though, right? The word that indicates that maybe all the other stuff I'm telling you is bullshit. Actually, next week, as the moon waxes, the first quarter moon, Jupiter stations and Pluto stations, there's a week for you. There's an active week. So, you know what I'm saying.